we need a governance of AI in defense, not just of autonomous weapon systems. Believe me, autonomous weapon systems are going to be a part, but that's not where war is going to be changed. It's going to be changed much earlier on in decision-making, in information gathering. We will need more data for intelligence, so it means that we might be all part of a mass surveillance system at some point. That governance, I think, needs to shift, and this is something we're working on these days. The governance of autonomous weapon system has been part of a debate which is being polarized between the dignity argument. So if you delegate to a machine the decision of killing a human, you are violating their dignity, or the, let's say, consequentialist argument, if autonomous weapon systems are on the field, men and women who are in the forces, they don't risk their life. If you place yourself in this field, there is no way to coming up with a solution because these are opposite positions. So my advice is to shift the ground, so to speak, and focus on risk management and understand what kind of risks absolutely as society we don't want to take and transform those into guardrails and then navigate the rest of the space by setting standards and regulations.
Mark, Mariarosaria, please take a seat. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for the big interview. And I would like just to quickly introduce the two guests that we have today on stage. Mariarosaria, she is a professor of digital ethics and defense technology at the Oxford Internet Institute. And she also was awarded with the Order of Merit by our President of the Republic, Sergio Mattarella. She published more than 100 papers, and she also was an advisor for the UK government in terms of defense. While Mark Brakel, now he is the Director of Policy of the Future of Life Institute. He also oversight and take part to the negotiation about the AI Act. In the past, he now coordinates the global advisory of the Future of Life Institute in terms of policies or strategies. And previously, he also served as the European Policy Director for the Future of Life Institute, and he also was a candidate at the Dutch national election. So thank you both for joining us today. And I would like to start with a video. I asked our stage director to show on the displays this video. Are some footages from the drone attack that the Ukrainian forces moved to the Russian aircraft in early June. They used more than 100 drones. I please ask you to share the footages and the videos, otherwise it's hard to introduce the talks, and then we will leave the video gone while we are talking. But we would like to start from this part, because it's now very clear to every one of us how much the AI is embedded in war and in warfare. So probably this operation, specifically the spider web operation, show us, Mariarosaria, how far can AI go into the military operation? Where are we now? Where do we stand in terms of technology advancement?
So I think that to be a little bit of a make a little bit of a provocation, that's only the beginning.
Yeah.
That's only the start. Ukraine has been a watershed moment. Before then, before Ukraine war, we would think about AI in defense as a remote question, something that might happen, but not this decade, perhaps not the next one. Within Ukraine, we've seen a radical shift. So when we talk about AI and defense, which is not warfare, it's defense, and I think it's what is important to stress, we think about autonomous weapon systems, the killer robots. You know, this is something that we've all come across in newspaper, the TV, the drones, but this is really the tip of the iceberg. AI is changing decisional and operational processes across the scope of defense. So it's not just about the weapon on the battlefield. It's about analyzing data for intelligence analysis. It's about cyber and using AI for cybersecurity and as a cyber weapon. It's about helping officers to design strategies. It's about, as we saw in Gaza, identifying targets and so guiding military operation. Is a 360 degrees transformation of the whole way in which defense organizations run, not just of the fighting. The fighting is a part, but it's not the entire thing that defense do. And it's changing also under leading process. So it's about the procurement, it's about the control of the data, it's about the governance, because simple questions with a very difficult answer to be found. But who's responsible once a fully autonomous drone makes a mistake or performs an unintended action? Forget that it's wrong or right, but something we never thought it would happen. So these are important questions that are not being addressed as quickly as the transformation of defense that we're seeing these days. And let me just end by saying that defense is arriving at the AI transformation later than other sectors. Healthcare, finance, even administration of justice. They have dealt with AI a few years ago. Defense has taken this, it's a long path, started with the first Gulf War, but we see this level of adoption increasing now, but it's been very slow before. So I regard this as a good thing, because it means that we can learn from the lessons in other domains and possibly applying them here. I remain pessimistic about the good outcome, but let's hope for that.
You put a lot of interesting topics on the table, but Mark, I would like to start from one of that with you, and especially what's your vision about the future of warfare, increased and enhanced by AI, also due to the kind of topics that the Future of AI Institute address?
Yeah, so if you look at the video that we just saw from Ukraine, where basically the Ukrainians moved a lot of drones into Russia in containers, it seemed. Has anyone here in the room seen the video Slaughterbots that came out in 2017 on YouTube? Could you raise your hand if you have?
Someone there is in the room over there? Someone also over there.
Yeah. So after you've seen all these interviews, do sort of open YouTube and just search for Slaughterbots. It's a short video that we made in 2017 that millions of people watched, and that exactly predicted this scenario that we saw in Ukraine, where in that case a terrorist group, but in this case the Ukrainians, moved lots of drones into a certain space. In terms of sort of your question on how we think warfare might evolve in future, I think the advantage of AI integration in weapon systems is speed. It's a lot faster, scale, and you need fewer humans to oversee the systems if you leave all of the systems unregulated. And I think that could potentially lead to, I think, 3 risks that we would be most concerned about. On the one hand, there is the risk of unintended escalation. In 1995 in Norway, a weather satellite went up, and the Soviets saw this launch and they thought it was an incoming American nuclear attack. And if you integrate AI into your military systems and you don't have a human general to override that, then you might have seen an all-out escalation, and I think that's one risk we would deeply worry about. The other is automated genocides. I think you can already see the beginnings of that, and I think there's a real risk that just executing a genocide becomes significantly easier if you don't need camps and you don't need soldiers, but you can let technology take care of more of that, using, for example, facial recognition to distinguish between people from different ethnic groups. And I think the third category is the accessibility of high-tech weaponry. I think we've come very used to the fact that the most capable technology is always in the hands of the Americans, and then it's in the hands of NATO. But if these systems are relatively cheap and the software can be copied, then many more actors might have access to the technology than before.
Speaking of actors, probably the elephant in the room are also Mariarosaria Taddeo, the big techs, or in general the tech companies that are in the process, but they have the governance of technology and data. So this morning we talk about this problem in terms of impact over democracies, over democratic process, and I would like to understand also with you, are countries losing the control over data, the governance over data and technologies related to warfare?
You know, I cannot imagine a harder way to impact democracy than by gaining control over the defense of democracy. So indeed, what we see when it comes to the digital transformation of defense is that the relation between the tech provider and the defense organizations is very much asymmetric. There's always been like a dependency of defense forces from those who provide the weapons. There is no defense otherwise. But it used to be that defense organizations would be leading this kind of discussions. These days, with digital, is very different. There is you could call it a sort of digital feudalism, where defense organizations often lack the expertise, the deep expertise to understand what kind of tools they're using and to use those tools properly. They lack the control insofar as buying a digital service for defense is not the same as to buying a tank. You don't get an object that you use. You get a service that someone else provides from remote. What we see, for example, in Ukraine from Palantir is that Ukrainian forces are using their services with somebody from Palantir sitting just next to them to tell them what to do and how to operate. So there is some level of skills which is outsourced. And also, we're losing control over the data that we're producing when we wage war. And this is crucial. War is a very costly activity, and data that we produce in war are very special. They are rich in terms of potential to train AI systems to become more robust, more controllable, more predictable. They are very telling about the strategy with which a country wages a war, but they are also very telling about combatants, non-combatants, situation of the environment. Now, so far, part of this data, not all this data, but part of this data is being acquired by private companies who are producing service for defense. I find it very problematic because it hinders control on the data. It undermines digital sovereignty, because once your battlefield data are in someone else's hands, then a lot of information about your country and your defenses is in someone else's hands. And today, those hands might be those of an ally or a friend, but who knows in 6 months, who knows in 10 years.
We see in these 5 months how friendship change.
And also I think, I'm an ethicist, so there is also always a moral element to it. The equation is this one. Battlefield data are crucial to develop a more robust and solid AI. A more robust and solid AI means an AI that we can control a bit more, that we can make sure it does less mistake. So there is a moral obligation from a public organizations like a defense organizations to maximize the potential of those data to improve the development of AI, so sharing it across all contractors. If the data are in the hands of one contractor, that means that the rest of the market is suffering from it, and so that the defense organizations are getting less robust and solid technology. So I think there is an element of sovereignty, but there is also an element of moral responsibilities of defense organizations to regain control.
Well, losing control, I would say, should advise governments to regain this control over the technology. But this is my opinion. I don't see governments pushing for much control over, especially technology embedded in the military, in the warfare. For example, also something that could have easily a broader support, like a non-proliferation of killer robots or automated weapons. It didn't get the international support. So how, Mark, can we create a pave the path to arrive to a sort of a non-proliferation treaty regarding to specifically technology embedded in the warfare? Is that something we can do? Are there the fundamentals to do it already in place or not?
It's not going to be easy. I think international law has seen better days. At the same time, biological weapons are not widely in use today, and that is a treaty that still holds. I think if you wouldn't have had a non-proliferation treaty, many more countries would have had nuclear weapons today than without it. So I think there is objective value in having these agreements. They matter, and I think because of, for all the reasons I think both of us outlined, I think there is a clear need to have some guardrails and some safeguards. And I think one maybe positive effect of the NATO summit in The Hague, where European countries are all going to invest 5% of their GDP, is that suddenly their defense capacity is much more relevant on the global stage than it was yesterday. And that means that gives an opportunity to us as Europeans to shape the rules of what we buy, and also demand something in return of other actors. And I think we should, yes, I mean, of course, we're going to do a lot of investing in defense, but rather than just throwing money at that problem, I think making sure that we use that extra influence that buys to also set different rules, I think is really important.
Since you mentioned the Hague meeting, the NATO meeting, we see Prime Minister Starmer being very strong about military spending. So, what was your advice to the British government in terms of embedding ethics into the approach to the military operation and the military doctrine of the UK armed forces?
So the UK has been, with the US and NATO, one of the 3 places where they have established ethical principles for AI in defense. Now the principles, if you look at them, they are very high level. Some of them are quite redundant because they common sense written in better English. My advice has been for them, in line with Mark was saying, to transform these principles into concrete governance, to establish a process so that these principles can be translated into practices, guiding people within the MOD, officers, into not making the decision, but following the right path. And there is an important difference here, because the questions about AI ethics in defense is about, I need principles so that I can make the right decision. It's not really so. If you are part of a hierarchical institutions and you are a soldier or you are an officer, you shouldn't be called out to make the decision. You should be part of a process that has made the right decision for you. So ethics needs to be embedded in the process through a proper translation. So that's been one of the key advices. And the other advice is exactly in line with what Mark was saying. So we need a governance of AI in defense, not just of autonomous weapon systems. Believe me, autonomous weapon systems are going to be a part, but that's not where war is going to be changed. It's going to be changed much earlier on in decision-making, in information gathering. We will need more data for intelligence, so it means that we might be all part of a mass surveillance system at some point. That governance, I think, needs to shift, and this is something we're working on these days. The governance of autonomous weapon system has been part of a debate which has been polarized between the dignity argument. So if you delegate to a machine the decision of killing a human, you are violating their dignity, or the, let's say, consequentialist argument, if autonomous weapon systems are on the field, men and women who are in the forces, they don't risk their life. If you place yourself in this field, there is no way to coming up with a solution because these are opposite positions. So my advice is to shift the ground, so to speak, and focus on risk management and understand what kind of risks absolutely as society we don't want to take, and transform those into guardrails, and then navigate the rest of the space by setting standards and regulations. I think that could be a starting point to have a more elaborated and articulated regulations of AI in defense. By the way, let me just say this, at the moment, we have a technology which is changing the way in which we run defense, and zero regulation for it. Nothing, not even a comma somewhere.
Even in the AI Act, the military is not been in some way regulated. Since you were part of the negotiation, why?
It's the first sentence of the AI Act. The first sentence says anything that is related to the military does not fall under this law. And that's because of the history of the EU, and it's outdated, but it sees itself as an entity that works on trade and not on defense.
And what could be a way to overcome these obstacles, this heritage that in the end is stopping us from, for example, impacting on a sector that is crucial and is becoming crucial day by day?
A bit of European confidence, I think, that we are not just like a union of people that trade economically and all defense issues are left to other big powers. But now, if we are becoming a major defense power ourselves, then that also comes with a need to set some rules.
Mariarosaria, what's your take?
I think that Trump and Putin are gonna help us in this direction a great deal. So a bit more pressure from the East, and a bit more of a, let's say, and washing from the West. And these are the two pushes. It's a political will.
So do you expect that this could change the political will of the EU continent?
I think in the medium term, with the rearm EU, the 5%. The revamping that this will lead to of the defense industry in Europe will make Europe feel more solid on this ground, European more compelled. We never talked about defense in this side of the world because we've enjoyed the longest peace ever, so defense has always been something remote. Now is a pressing need. These two things might lead to the public opinion focusing on this topic, and in the medium term to some more coordinated European approach onto this.
I have another question for both of you, because you both mentioned the idea of having safeguards and guardrails that involve the human in some part of the process. The idea is the so-called human in the loop. But I'm worried that sometimes this human in the loop is just something that we say, the good refrain to make us sure that at the end of the day someone will push the stop button, but will really impact when you, or even from a human approach, if I would be advised by a machine that can analyze big amount of data, that I should do that kind of action, how can I react and maybe stop, do the opposite? I don't know if I'm ready to take this sort of decision. So I would like to understand how this human in the loop could not be just a wishful thinking. Mark, starting with you.
Well, the key concept in a draft treaty is that of meaningful human control. And I think that might sound quite vague, like what is meaningful human control? But it is something different than a human in the loop or just a stop button. I think we can all recognize that. And I think many concepts in international law, like proportionality or distinction, are also quite vague, right? Like if you, let's say you bomb 5 soldiers and you kill them and 2 children next to the soldiers die, is that a proportional attack, right? Like, presumably maybe, but if you would kill 200 children for those 5 soldiers, well, we can all recognize that that wasn't proportional. So in meaningful human control, yes, there will be gray zones, but I think there is an obligation in how you design systems, in how you operate systems, to make sure that it's more than just pressing a button.
Mariarosaria.
Yeah, I think we have to understand that it's not just about one interaction, it's about the process. So we had a human in the loop when using Levandere Gospel on Gaza. That's not the point. The point is that an organization decided to deploy a machine that does 10% false positive. The point is that the human in the loop were possibly not trained, given few seconds to make the call whether the decision was valid or not, and possibly incentivized to let it run even if it was wrong. So the human in the loop is, I'm very skeptical about the phrase itself, because it's become a motto, it's become a buzzword. But without a process that enables the control, enables the intervention, the human in the loop is nothing but a window dressing phrase, is nothing more than that. In defense, the phrase meaningful control is also very much debated. What does it mean meaningful, when it's too much, when it's too little? I always say, like, you can imagine two extremes. There is maximum control, where you have something or someone who's vetting any step of the machine. At any moment, there is a human that says to the machine, yes, proceed, yes, proceed. And there is minimum control, where the human has the time to unplug the machine. This is the scope, this is the range. Somewhere here, considering the fact that we have to be effective and efficient, that you have to have cognitive space, there is the sweet spot of control. We haven't quite identified that. But that sweet spot is not just identified, or should not be identified only considering the human and the machine. It's the institution, it's the process, and how we get there. Without that, nobody will ever, I always make these examples. Very few times in my life I have redone the calculation of a calculator. Usually I trust it very much. The same way in which you would trust an AI system, unless you are trained, unless you know what's the situation, you know that it's been wrong this many times in this contest, and unless your organization has given you a room to protect your autonomy, unless disagreeing with the machine doesn't become a risk for you later on. So you see, control requires an infrastructure. It doesn't emerge just by one person pushing or not a button.
Okay, from war, now I would like to move to another, let's say, conflict in terms of arguments. Is the artificial general intelligence, the so-called AGI. We listened before, Janet referring to super intelligence, and we are in the same field. I would like to start showing 2 figures. I asked them to be shown on the display. The first one is a figure regarding the Moore law, so the law that represent the increase of computational power with the increase of the number of transistors. And the second one is the meter graph, and it's about the length of a task an AI can do, and the speed that now is doubling every 7 months. I would like Mark for us to describe and to give you an opinion about these two figures.
Yeah, well, I think we talk about artificial general intelligence, which to me means an AI system that can do everything that a human can do. And I think that the meter graph in particular shows that at the moment you can ask an AI to do a task for you that takes about 15 minutes, and then it sort of breaks down. And what Meter found is that every 7 months that task length doubles. So 7 months from today, an AI system can do about 30 minutes worth of tasks, then 14 months from today, about an hour, and within 3 years, you're looking at the 8-hour workday. And I think that has really profound implications for us as humans. I think very few people, are aware of sort of the pace of the development, and I think this graph is a very powerful way to show how quickly systems are taking over important aspects of our life.
So, from your point of view, how far we are from this so-called AGI? Because it's somewhere in the future, there are many different opinions, years, months, weeks, so where do we stand?
Predicting technology is really hard, right? So there was this famous speech in 1933 by a guy named Lord Rutherford in London, and he said that getting energy from an atom would never happen. It was a complete joke. And then the next day, there was this Hungarian who read in Budapest in the paper, a guy called Szilard, that speech, and he invented a nuclear chain reaction within 24 hours after that speech. And I think artificial general intelligence trajectories are a bit similar. Like, we can't really predict exactly when we will reach that moment. But there are prediction platforms where expert forecasters will apply numbers, and the average at the moment is 2033. So, yeah, I think we're looking at artificial general intelligence, if we don't act, within a decade.
Okay, I introduced this sort of second part of our interview as a conflict, because there is a conflict in understanding how much the AGI is really something to care about. The Future of Life Institute is very focused on that, while there are other, let's say, viewers on the AI field that say that this, in some way, a topic that is shifting attention from more urgent topics. I would like to recall this article we wrote for Wired Italy. The title was "We Can't Stand Anymore the artificial general intelligence," because there are a lot of people that say, no, this is not the urgency, this is not something we have to prioritize. Mariarosaria, what is your opinion? Because I know that on this topic you have a different view rather than one of Mark, and I would like to merge these two sides of the discussion.
Okay, to put it bluntly, it's bad sci-fi. Not even good sci-fi anymore. It's not going to happen, never. 23, 33, 45, ever. There is a nice paper from Newell and Simon, who are some of the fathers of AI, in '58, where Simon says, well, in 10 years we're going to have machines who can produce art. They can play and can produce very much like the robot we saw before. And you're tempted in reading that paper and say, oh, they also thought AI would happen. But then you continue reading, and they tell you, well, they will behave as if. They will do things as if. The reason why I say that it's not going to happen is not because I have a crystal ball, I can see the future. It's because in those metrics that we saw before, we confuse the quantitative with the qualitative. Human minds, human brains, they are not syntactic engines. We don't work by combining symbols according to rules. We work by understanding meanings. That understanding of meanings in literature is called the symbol grounding problem, the ability to attach a meaning to a symbol without anybody having taught you so. That's not equivalent, by the way, to a child learning to speak. It's more like how in the evolution, ant, a flower, a human being understands that something is, for example, good or bad for them. That mechanism does not exist in machines. Doesn't matter how much power, how much data, how much programming we want to do. That jump from the syntactic to the semantics doesn't happen like that. It might happen if we start plugging chips into our brains or the brains of some biological beings. But otherwise, semantics belongs to biology, doesn't belong to silico. That's why it's not going to happen. I'm confident about that. And also, going back to the qualitative, a few months ago, Meta released the new benchmarks of their algorithms, of the LLMs. There was no progress on any significant benchmarks. And going forward, you know, the Moore law and all these graphs going up, but the point is not how much we compress hardware. The point is, for example, how much does it cost to validate tokens? At the moment, this cost is very high, so there is no really incentive, unless it's research, to go forward. The level of hallucination threshold is super, super high. Unless it goes very low, we're talking about 0.1%, those machines will never become a real useful thing for us. So if you take all the pictures together, even if you don't agree with me that it's a sci-fi, this is certainly something to distract us from more important questions. And it's not a case that most of this narrative comes from people who have to sell a product, not from people who do research, not from people who do, who have non-commercial interest. Because when you have distracted them, or trying to control the narrative about the Robocop coming, or the Terminator, sorry, to coming and ruling us, you don't need to focus anymore on a definition of autonomous weapon systems. You don't need to focus anymore on procurement, so to take away the data from private companies and give it back to state. You don't have to focus anymore on sustainability challenges.
I want to give Mark the opportunity to give us a contrast now, because I like the eating of this conversation. So
but Mark is
there are many arguments on your side, and I would like to give him also the opportunity to give his opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I was patiently waiting. No, I mean, I think we might not disagree entirely, right? Because I think the question to me is not so much like, is artificial general intelligence, is a machine going to be able to be exactly like a human? The question to me is the effect the same? And I think if you think back of the history of flight, right? When we had the first planes taking off, like, no one was saying, well, this is not real flight because it's not flapping like a bird, and the wings are not like exact, and we don't quite know how birds fly, and we don't know how sort of the bone density of the bird works exactly so that they can properly take off. No, we entered the airplane, and it was a different way of flying. And I think we're probably going to see something very similar with machines, where machines are able to do anything that we can, and that's going to have dramatic effects on our society, even if they don't inside of them do it in exactly the same way as humans do. But I think that's kind of besides the point. And I think we underestimate this technology or dismiss it as science fiction at our peril, because in China and in the United States, for better or for worse, there are a lot of people who believe in this development and invest absolute billions in it, right? I mean,
it's a good thing that Musk wastes money on their thing, right?
Well, I mean, if AGI fails as a concept, right, I think the Future of Life Institute and I would be the first to celebrate, because I think we are terrified of the risks that come with it. But I'm not as confident as you that the paradigm will fail, especially, and I think nor is our international markets, given how much they invest. So I'd love for this to be a massive distraction operation, but I don't think it is. And I think if you look at the evidence as well, whenever there is discussion of artificial intelligence, people will look at all the aspects of it. So I think to suggest that sort of raising one part of AI will distract from others, I mean, I think that the evidence of that is highly disputable.
But we're distinguishing, sorry, I need to say two things.
Okay, but just in a flash, because we have to close.
Very quickly. Analogy are not a way of reasoning. Analogy are a way of introducing a thing. So I agree with you. AI does things differently from the way humans do, and that's fine. That does not mean that AI will do things instead of humans, unless we let it. So it's not the AI who's going to do that, but it's us in control, first. Second, let's not confuse commercial with research, because the fact that people like, I don't know, I've talked also to Jeff Hinton, for example, people who think that singularity system will commit to it with money, that doesn't indicate now anything, because the amount of money those people have, like Musk or sort, is so much that the fraction they're wasting on it is not indicative of any commitment, if not of the way of running something that they find useful. I don't take that as an indication of a serious development anytime soon.
Mariarosaria, Mark, you should consider invited for the big interview next year, because I would like to go on with this discussion.
Sorry.
We just focus on AGI, I promise.
Okay.
But it was very, very interesting, and I know the debate is going on this topic, because we see how hard it is to see all the shade, the nuances over so simple free words, and how can shape the way we look at technology. Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you our audience to be part with us. I know there are some questions we don't have the time to take it, but we can reach Mariarosaria and Mark then in the lobby. Thank you all for your time. Thank you very much.